I think today I want to talk about government assistance. I want to start by pointing out that for most of us, we get government assistance wrong. As a society in general, as an electorate, we just don't understand what government assistance actually is, where it's actually going. So, the overwhelming majority of people think that government assistance is assistance to the poor. So they think of SNAP, they think of TAMP, they think of Section 8, they think of utilities assistance. So SNAP is Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program. TAMP is Temporary Assistance for Needy Families. Section 8 is housing assistance. There's utilities assistance that's generally awarded through Section 8. So we think of these programs, but that's not where the bulk of government assistance lies. A good analogy would be environmental change. So the environmental change is as a result of industrial polluters. I want us to begin thinking of government assistance the same way. Yes, government assistance is available to poor people. It's available to people who just can't make ends meet. But the overwhelming majority of government assistance goes to industry. A good example of this is from, say, about the 1950s, post-World War II era. It really began with DARPA and just went from there. We really have not had a new technology that wasn't developed with government assistance. DARPA is the premier program for this. The problem with DARPA is that you don't have to produce results. It's not a requirement to receive a DARPA grant. Now, I'm not entirely against this, and I'll go into greater detail later. But for right now, I'm looking at companies like Northrop Grumman and McDonnell Douglas and Lockheed Martin. These companies have obtained billions of dollars in government grants and basically don't have anything to show except shareholder value. Right? So the federal government, you and I, the taxpayer, we're giving money to Lockheed Martin, who in turn is giving that money to their investors, and they're not contributing. Not even for what they're supposed to be contributing for. If I'm not mistaken, and I am neither an expert nor well-versed, but if I'm not mistaken, Lockheed Martin has actually completed 3 DARPA projects in the last 20 years, and they currently have roughly 12 DARPA projects open. DARPA is kind of a nice program because the idea is you have an unlimited budget. So you have money to spend on research for the advancement of the military. Now, the problem with this is not that they're doing it. In fact, I'd like to see them expand DARPA to areas outside of the military. Pharmaceuticals would be a great area for DARPA to expand into. But beyond that, again, later on in the video, the problem is that taxpayer money is a finite resource. And if we're going to say, okay, we're going to take, say, 25% of our taxpayer money, and we're going to devote that to DARPA grants, those DARPA grants don't run out, but the taxpayer money does. Now, I have no problem with them doing science for the sake of science. I'm a huge fan. I think it's necessary. In the 1920s, quantum mechanics had no application. By the 1970s, we saw quantum mechanics explode. All the computers that you have, it's because of those principles that were developed in the 1920s that had no application. Your cell phone, all of that, the smartphones that you use, all of that, the new batteries, the new material science for the batteries to develop green energies, all of that came from that science that, when they were developing it, had no application. You couldn't use quantum dynamics for anything. But we developed it. We asked questions. We did research. We did studies. We made observations. And as a result of those observations, we had a technological advancement boom. In the 1970s through the 1990s, we ended up with the internet, social media. We're going into virtual reality and artificial intelligence, which as of right now is not technically intelligence. It's big data and probabilistic statistics. But the reason that we're capable of computing at that speed, where it feels like it's in real time, is because we have a greater understanding of the movement of quantum properties that allow those processes to take place. And if we hadn't done that investment, then we wouldn't have that technology now. So I'm not saying programs like DARPA are bad. Again, as I said earlier, I would love to see us expand DARPA, particularly in the area of pharmaceuticals. But I do have a problem with companies like Northrop Grumman or McDonnell Douglas, which hasn't developed. McDonnell Douglas hasn't developed a real technology since they ripped off Boeing's automated flight system in 1953, I think. Maybe later, I don't remember. More accurately, I'm not really sure. I came across a fact in passing and just never held on to it. But the DARPA grant that made McDonnell Douglas was a technology that Boeing developed. They took it and applied it to missiles, which gave us greater accuracy when we were firing mortar shells, when we were firing bombs, dropping bombs. It allowed us to make guided bombs. And that DARPA grant went to McDonnell Douglas. And in reality, the factual matter is that since then, McDonnell Douglas hasn't done anything. And they're one of the largest recipients of DARPA grants and government contracts. And I can't understand why. They're not doing anything to earn it. And what really grinds my gears is it's my tax dollars that go to pay it. I'm not allowed to give my tax dollars to buy school lunches, which, hey, I'm all in favor of doing that. I would much rather do that than give my money to McDonnell Douglas, who's giving it to shareholders, most of whom don't need it. They have enough money. Another good example of government assistance are sports stadiums. There's one exception, Green Bay. The city of Green Bay owns the Green Bay Packers. And if I was living in Green Bay, I would take no issue with my tax money building a new Lambeau Field for the Green Bay Packers, because I own the Green Bay Packers. The Hallis family are multimillionaires. They've been multimillionaires since they toured the country with Red Grange. They partnered up with Staley Hardware in Decatur, Illinois back whenever, and founded the Decatur Staley's football team, hired Red Grange, and made football popular all over the United States of America. Every few years, they build a new stadium. They keep wanting to move out of Soldier Field, and they're moving to Arlington Heights now. And Arlington Heights taxpayers are going to build them a stadium. I don't understand why. They can afford to build the stadium without my tax money. Without tax money from the people of Arlington Heights. Without tax money from the people of Chicago. They can afford to build a new stadium. They have the resources to do it. Even if they don't have the liquid capital, they have the credit. What are they? They're worth like $80 million? I'll go my whole life, I'll never see $1 million cash, let alone 80 million. I don't understand why I have to build a stadium for the Chicago Bears or any other sports team. The Boston Red Sox, the New York Yankees. I don't see a reason for that government assistance. There's no purpose in spending government money to build a sporting stadium. Especially when you consider the local school districts aren't allowed to use the stadium, which means they have to spend money on their own stadium. Now, if my tax dollars are going to pay for a stadium for the Chicago Bears, then Arlington Heights High School had better be able to use that stadium. The other local high schools, Palatine, which Palatine is kind of weird because that community can afford to do this, but Palatine had better be able to use the new Chicago Bears stadium. I think it's only fair. You want the taxpayers to pay for it, let the taxpayers use it. Otherwise, I don't value that government assistance. Especially considering the McCaskies can build their own stadium. They have the money to do it. Same with all of the other sport team owners. They can build their own stadiums. They have the financial resources to do it. And I think it's unfair that we, the taxpayers, build their stadiums and can't use those stadiums. And on top of that, we have to pay, $100 a ticket? I think it's more than that now. I think it's... Because the season ticket price is not that I look because I don't like sports. I'm not a sports fan, but season tickets are obscene. And that money doesn't go back into the community. The team owners keep that money. So why do they need government assistance to build their stadiums? In the United States, there are 3 companies that make insulin. Insulin is federally subsidized, which means that the federal government pays these companies to continue making insulin. Every year, those 3 companies get together and they fix the price of insulin. They fix the price of insulin. Our tax dollars goes to those companies to guarantee that they produce insulin, which they in turn sell to us at not a reasonable, at an enormous profit. To me, that sounds like government assistance. So the point of me pointing all this out, and there are thousands of examples like this. Energy companies, they get grants to actually drill the mines. They get federally subsidized loans to build the drilling infrastructure. They get the pipeline infrastructure is maintained by the states and counties. The distribution infrastructure is maintained by the municipalities. And yet, I have to pay them to provide me electricity. I already paid them to get the natural gas out of the ground. My tax dollars built the telephone poles, the power lines that they own. Why am I paying money to a private utility company when I already paid for all of their infrastructure? I paid for it through my tax dollars. So I gave them government assistance so that they could turn around and charge me to pay their shareholders. That money is not coming back into my community. Additionally, as I said earlier, there are almost no technological advancements post-World War II that weren't government subsidized. So my tax dollars are already paid in. They got government assistance to develop those technologies. So where's the payoff for the community? Where is the dividend for the taxpayer? See, I can see a dividend in temporary assistance to needy families. I don't earn enough money. I'm not going to be able to make my rent and get to work. I have 4 kids. The government gives me, I think it's like $400 that I can use however I need to. I can use that $400 to buy food. I can buy medicine with that $400. I can put shoes on my kids for that $400. I can put gas in my car so that I can get to my job, and I can drive to job interviews to get a better job. See, I can see how temporary assistance to needy families can develop a social dividend. Right? I can see how my tax dollars have a payoff. My neighbor, who has a part-time job, can't make ends meet, they get this money from the federal government every month, and it's never enough. Like I said, it's a small amount, like $400 or something, and they use that money to go to school, learn a new skill, get a better job. SNAP benefits. Again, I can see a dividend. Just statistically speaking, and every study seems to have the same number. And feel free to look up the material online. I don't know if the Trump administration took the studies down yet or not, but you can find them in other places. Any university Any university that studies urban societies, they'll have a department where they'll have studies similar to this, and the number seems to be about a 400% return. So when I invest in poor people, my return on investment is generally around 400%, right? To put that in simple terms, every dollar I put in, at some future date, I get $4 back. That's not true with We Energies. Right? So Wisconsin Energies, which is now a private company thanks to Governor Scott Walker. Every dollar I put into Wisconsin Energies, I'm not getting a dollar of electricity back. You follow? And then on top of that, I have to pay to maintain Wisconsin Energy's power lines. Part of my tax revenue, when I pay my taxes, that 5% state income tax that I pay, a little bit of that goes to maintain Wisconsin Energy's power lines. And then I pay my electric bill, which for me on average is about $120, $130 a month. In return for, as far as I'm concerned, I already paid for the electricity. I subsidize Wisconsin Energy all the way down. So I'm not paying for the electricity. I'm paying an administrative fee. I'm paying for them to have the privilege to bill me. My municipality has a billing department. They could do that. The infrastructure exists. I'm not spending any more in tax money to get an electric bill from my city. And I can't see why not. I mean, my state, my federal government, they subsidize the entire infrastructure to provide me this electrical power. I don't value the idea of paying We Energies an administrative fee. I don't want to give them that government assistance. I already gave them government assistance, which they billed me for and then gave to their shareholders. So you see here, as I'm giving government assistance to industry, which is where the bulk of government assistance goes, the society, the tax base, has a net loss because we're continuing to pay beyond what we paid in our tax dollars. And we don't see any benefit. We really don't. You can make an argument, oh, well, they're providing electricity. Yeah, but who's paying for that infrastructure again? The taxpayers? Yeah. The taxpayers paid for the initial infrastructure. The taxpayers maintain the infrastructure. And then on top of that, the taxpayers pay an administration fee. So all of the government assistance they got, and then I have to pay more on top. I don't value that. That's what you would call in economics a loss. And any investor will tell you when you're losing money, you cut. Don't throw good money after bad. So when you're looking at government assistance, where are you investing? Because in the end, that's what government assistance is. Government assistance is an investment. We're going to give you this money now in return for the promise that you're going to contribute more than that money back. The companies that we're giving money to, the pharmaceutical companies, the mining companies, the military service companies that we give money to, they're not giving anything back. We're actually getting a negative return on investment. So my thought is, since that's the case, instead of doing that, why don't we trickle the money up, right? So instead of investing in McDonnell Douglas, instead of investing in Pfizer, instead of investing in SpaceX, turn that money into social programs. So expand SNAP, expand Medicaid. Notice I said Medicaid, not Medicare. Expand Medicaid, expand SNAP, expand TAMF, expand these social programs. And I guarantee you, because historically this is borne out, the average number across the board is a 400% return on investment. As opposed to dumping more money into Goldman Sachs, who I can guarantee is going to create the next bubble, and when it bursts, they're going to come back for a government bailout. And then we're going to give them government assistance so that they can pay their shareholders and give bonuses to their CEOs. There's never going to be a return on the government assistance that we provide. I think that's basically what I wanted to say about this side of government assistance. And I promised that I would talk a little more about DARPA. I think that the future is uncertain. So programs like DARPA, and rather than DARPA, I'd rather see it all fall under the umbrella of the National Science Foundation, which I know that the current presidential administration is trying to get rid of. I am a firm believer in science for the sake of science. And again, quantum mechanics was the perfect example of that. Back in the 1920s, when it was being developed, it had no application. None. You couldn't use it for anything. It didn't mean anything. Much of biological science originally started out not meaning anything. A lot of environmental science, geology, initially geology was just for the purpose of finding precious metals. But I think it's important because you don't know what that science is going to evolve into. You don't know what the engineers are going to do with what the scientists give them. There are, to my knowledge, in my frame of reference, there are 4 drugs that came from places that we shouldn't look for drugs. You don't think of them as pharmaceutical. Nor should you think of them as pharmaceutical. But because somebody was curious about what does this do What does this chain of events happen? What does this chemical chain reaction actually do? And they explored it. And we ended up with some truly extraordinary drugs. Penicillin, invented accidentally. Insulin, invented accidentally. That idea of somebody being so curious that they follow down that rabbit hole until they come up with something interesting, not even useful. So, as you recall in the beginning of the video, I said I'm not against DARPA. I actually like the idea of DARPA. I don't know if it should be unlimited, and I don't know if I do know actually. After about 10 experimental failures, you got to take a fresh look at your idea. Whatever your hypothesis was, it doesn't work, and you have to figure out why it's not working. Companies like Lockheed Martin and McDonnell Douglas, they keep dipping in the well because nobody is stopping them. Nobody is stopping them because of us. Us, the American electorate. I was having a discussion with a guy that I work with, and rightfully he was complaining about how bad things are economically, and they are. I'm not Donald Trump. I'm not going to tell you it's a rosy picture. The economy sucks, and it's going to get way worse than it gets better. And then, at the end of this, the economy's still going to suck. Do you know why? Because we're going to re-elect all of the people that created this mess. You want a different economy, you need different politicians. We have to elect government which is going to come to this and look at it with a fresh set of eyes. There are solutions out there, a lot of good ones. I'm a big government guy. My solutions are all big government. I think there should be a limit to how many of these, I want to say, National Science Foundation grants people get. This university research funding. So you fund research. Either it works or it doesn't. If it doesn't work, there's nothing wrong with that. You don't learn from success. You learn from failure. If my experiment fails, I got to look at my experiment. I got to figure out what variable I missed. I have to find out, is my hypothesis strong or is it weak? And I guarantee you, the defense contractors that are suckling off the teat of DARPA, they're not doing that. They're making way too much money to do that. And the reason that they can get away with it is because of the way we vote. We re-elect the same people that keep telling them it's fine. In universities, you publish or perish. And if your experiment fails, no scientific journal publishes you. There's another type of government assistance that we give out a lot. And I think it's time we stop. Our federal legislators basically have Medicaid. They essentially get free health care. Their salary is enormous. Which, if you're writing legislation, if you're doing your job, I don't mind. I'll pay you for the work you do. I firmly believe in that. And the reason that I believe in that is because I've never had an employer that values my labor. I work hard. I don't even want to get paid what I'm worth. I just want to make a living. Right? Well, our legislators do more than make a living. They make more money. They earn more money than they work. And I don't understand. I said, you look at academics, it's publish or perish. You have to write academic papers. You have to write books. You have to explore new ideas and communicate them to the scientific field, at the very least. Why aren't our legislators required to write legislation? Why aren't the members of the House required to write a budget? According to the Constitution, that's their primary job. The House of Representatives, their primary job is to write a budget. All right, even if you don't want to do that, you just want to investigate Democrats all day long. At some point, you have to release a report. Comer has been investigating Biden, God, since he got into office. Where's the report? That's government assistance. We are quite literally paying our legislators to do nothing. Whose fault is that? Ours. Ours. We keep electing them. That kind of government assistance, I want to see go away. But that assistance to the poor, that assistance to the needy, that always has a payoff. Always. And for my neighbor down the street, who worked at a factory for 60 years, until a private equity company came and took it over, and he lost his job. And he's too old to go back to work. He really is. He worked at his factory for 60 years. I don't think he needs to go back to work. I want to pay him Social Security. Not only do I want to pay him Social Security, I want to pay him Social Security at the cost of living. I think that's a good investment. He raised 4 terrific kids. They're wonderful people. Those kids are out there. They're working hard. They go to work every day. They take care of mom and dad. They visit twice a month. Mom and dad are too old to go back to work. And they can't make a living on $1,100 a month Social Security. Not in this neighborhood. It's impossible. I think they should be making at least $3,000 a month Social Security. Because that's how much it costs to live in this neighborhood. That kind of government assistance, I'm on board. That's an investment that they made that I think they should be getting a payoff on. They've been contributing their whole lives. Why not? They paid their taxes. They worked just as hard as everybody else. They deserve it. I think everybody should get the chance to retire. And I think the idea of Social Security is so that they can. I think that should be the purpose of Social Security. So that you can retire. And again, it's up to us. We need to elect people who think that way and are willing to pursue that. Now, if you disagree with me, that's fine. I mean, there are wonderful arguments on both sides. Some of the arguments against my big government ideas, I in fact do actually agree with. If I were an elected official, I wouldn't try to implement them, but they're good ideas. I think that we think about government assistance wrong. I think that we don't understand who actually is getting government assistance. And I think that we've been sold a bill of goods. Because I'll tell you what, most of the people on government assistance, they're not lazy. The majority of them actually have jobs. The majority of them actually have full-time jobs. They just don't earn enough. Now, the reason they don't earn enough, again, is because of us. We don't value the labor of others. As far as I'm concerned, my labor is at this value, and the other guy's labor is at this value. That's the way we think. I work hard, but the guy next to me, he doesn't work at all. In the end, that's not entirely true. It's not accurate. Are there people that will try to game the system? Absolutely. But their fraud detection department for most of these government programs is extraordinary. Looking at Medicare alone, everybody wants to privatize Medicare, which I can't figure out why. Any metric you choose, fraud detection, fraud prosecution, conviction of fraud. Conviction of fraud is my favorite because Medicare is 3.5 times better than private. Across the board. No private insurance company has convicted more fraud than Medicare. Realistically, as I begin to ramble and repeat myself, we all have government assistance wrong. We're looking at it wrong. Poor people getting government assistance, they're not the ones that we should be angry with. They're not the ones sucking on the government's teat. You know who is sucking on the government's teat? Shareholders. Shareholders. You know who is sucking on the government's teat? Legislators. Poor people? They're not. And I think we need to start thinking about it differently. Because nobody thinks about these industrial government grants as government assistance. Make no mistake about it. DARPA grants are government assistance. Small business grants, which I'm totally in favor of. Small businesses are good for every community. Less Walmart, more corner store grocery. But a small business grant is still government assistance. Better Business Bureau grants. It's government assistance. Technology development grants. That's government assistance. And we really need to start thinking of it that way. Because when we do, we're going to realize who's actually ripping us off. Because it's not that guy 3 doors down getting food stamps and Section 8 housing. All right, I think that's about all I have to say on this topic for now.